Ever wondered what makes TV so powerful in Jamaica? Time to find out. Welcome to Global TV Group 358, where television meets innovation. We're not just about shows, we're about shaping society. In Jamaica, TV keeps you informed, connects diverse voices, and supports democracy. Imagine a Jamaica where broadcasters unite, sharing data and collaborating globally. That's us, a unified voice in the TV industry. Did you know TV advertising is still king? It drives website traffic, boosts brand equity, and powers integrated campaigns. Even in an age of digital, TV stands strong, resilient in tough times. Our global TV deck is your treasure trove of insights and data. With charts, graphs, and success stories, it's your guide to impactful TV advertising. Curious to learn more? Visit our website and see how Global TV Group 358 keeps television at the heart of entertainment in Jamaica. Get ready to binge watch the future.
Put me again, you can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy scallion, we can't buy time. You can't put me again. Can't put me again. You can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. You the chop line and a resort to crime. You can't put me again.
What we gonna eat no money, what we at you, eat no at you. Covid money, miss away in the your little rat you. Use the youth, the money, waste no must a man to statue. Say me like a cash you, but bigger than a figure you. Take the spit of money, galang and say that is not you. On the head, the man above end up, him a got a bet. Too much it in the kitchen, some a fly by like a patu. My singers and DJs and social media's coming at you.
It burn me,
300% raise.
it burn me,
Garbage pile of the day.
it burn me,
Give the teacher them
it
raise.
burn me,
I see corruption face.
it burn me,
Mash down the people them house.
it burn me,
Every day appear arms out.
it burn me,
Appear money them a thief.
it burn me.
And them a sell out the beach.
Can't put me again, you can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy scallion, we can't buy time. You can't put me again. Can't put me again. You can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. You the chop line and a resort to crime. You can't put me again.
Come me say big up all the charities and all of the givers. Some a go like say them powerful, me no make a bigger. The 100 the promises, none of them not deliver. Cut up the youth, they rap and they down in a whatever. Member bowl money and they lie them tell. Corruption smell and they pocket them swell. When police don't a market like Satan out of hell, go mash up people start like thief when them sell.
It burn me,
On them treat the market man.
it burn me,
On them a treat the cat man.
it burn me,
On them treat the peanut man.
it burn me,
On them a treat the dirt man.
it burn me,
On them a treat the son man.
it burn me,
How them a treat policeman.
it burn me,
How them a treat soldier man.
it burn me.
How them a treat everyone.
Can't put me again, you can't put me again. You hold me down for a very long time. Can't buy sugar, we can't buy lime. Can't buy scallion, we can't buy time. You can't put me again. Can't put me again. You can't.
Stibby-dim day, stibby-dim day, stibby-dim day. We in Global TV say certain kind of friend we no keep. And some informer friend we love like. We in Global, bona fake friend and bona tape. We in Global, we not promote them, we not support them. Look at them on the cheek, come here represent for. We in Global TV, check it.
Good evening, and welcome to an introduction of the People's Tribunal, an initiative of Global TV where we hope we can, in social media world and the greater collective, work together in order to advance our social standing, our country, or understanding of our political spheres and our world. Remember, we also told you that on Friday nights, we'll take a look at geopolitics and how it is progressing in this very speedy changing world, as well as we'll look at how the BS get dried on Marlon Morgan's mouth within ours. So we have quite a bit to go through tonight. Later on, we will go through explaining or the Global TV Center for Justice and the People's Tribunal. We also hope to take your feedback on the initiative, so that we will get to. But we will deal with LYNn Morgan, as you know, but try to spell things like Trump, LYNN apostrophe, LYNn Marlon Morgan. To my community of party and all my family members, platform moderators, membership holders, dear subscribers, commenters, and trolls, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Sharon Bernard, good evening. Jeanette Brissett, Yvonne Riley, Estina Tyne, Rose Sweet, Violet Watson, Abina Sarkody, Sophia Hall, Gloria Morris, Brose, Christine Gilbert, Jamaican Carlos, Wagwan Bro, Colin, good evening, and welcome. No sooner have Marlon spouted the BS that one would thought he turned BS into a brick of gold, but no sooner has that very BS dried up on his mouth. This Labour government never ceases to provide us a scandal a day. Renice Nicholson, you called yesterday for Dr. Campbell's resignation because of issue of trust. Marlon Morgan. LYNn Morgan, you called for Dayton Campbell's removal from several different areas because of issue of trust. At the same time, we knew you were lying on a lot of things. We knew you were spinning. But when you're lying, Marlon, and you're bringing other people into the lie, you must be sure that those people are a part of the lie and will support the lie as well. Cliff Hughes, get up off of your knee, darling. Get up off of your knee, Cliff Hughes. We know you work hard. We know you want to work off the little money where you owe we. But good God, Cliff Hughes. Good God, Cliff Hughes. Pan your knee every day, so. Now what broadcasting or journalistic interests does Cliff Hughes have in peddling? But he always tell lie. In peddling lies, calling authorities into question, because a Cliff Hughes are run round with the authorities are investigating. Anti-corruption agencies are investigating. LYNn up made a publication this morning or whenever that the anti-corruption agency said they're not doing any investigation. Cliff call up Mocha name. Cliff call up Mocha name. Mocha come out, come tell Cliff say, then don't mix them up. What's Cliff Hughes' vested interest in peddling a story, drawing the anti-corruption bodies into their JLP scandal in order to show themselves as what I really don't know. But Cliff Hughes is really making himself look cheaper than we know him to be. Cheaper than we know Cliff Hughes to be. But Marlon Morgan, you're calling for Dayton Campbell's resignation. How rich. When at the same time, you were peddling lies in public. You were publicly drawing investigative agencies into disrepute in order just to make sure, say, you have backative for no story. How lying, devious, and scandalous, Marlon. You think that it's anything that anyone would have turned a blind eye to? Hold on, my peeps. You'd think this is something that anyone would have turned a blind eye to. And you peddle the story, you peddle it, as I said this morning, to the untrained eyes, not eyes, to the untrained ears, one would really believe Marlon Morgan's story, because Marlon Morgan is quite a good spin doctor, one must admit. But when you're spinning in an era where so much independent journalists are out here listening to the spins, it's not just a spin that is contained within the JLP circle. You're making it wider. Y'all bring other people, 1 second. Y'all bring other people into it. Because, me say, when you draw a crowd, the story is sweeter. When you draw crowd, Marlon Morgan, story sweeter. So you make sure, say, you draw crowd for the story. Jamaica people must be shocked, horror of PNP's corruption. Not that me pick up for the PNP, but that's the picture you paint to the Jamaica people. Because the dummy sitting beside you, he said, it's a what he call it? It's a flagrant what word did this dummy use? Flagrant something to our democracy, flagrant attack or something on our democracy. Don't understand the point he's making. But the shock horror that Marlon came with yesterday, after 2 weeks of contemplation. But it was never such it has always been a story for them. But to draw cheer and call crowd, it's to cover their own disgrace that was outed by Desmond Mackenzie when we found out that the government is engaged in a nationwide scam removing land from already poor people. At the same time, when the government is giving land to the state of China. Let us heap off into, because you know we say Friday night we do a bit of geopolitics to get us up to speed with the world. Later on, when more people come, we'll explain the People's Tribunal. But in a very fast moving and changing world, it is important for us to understand how it is moving, how it is changing, and how we must position ourselves to make sure we're in a structure of power, not in a structure of continue to toil and labor on the plantation. So last week we looked at the downward turning of the American economy. Tonight we will look at the downward turning of the French economy and the rise of Africa that Western media dare to speak about.
To bear it. None of them would be in a sovereign country today if the French army had not.
This video is brought to you by the Black Culture's Diary. Very informative channel.
Been deployed in this region.
Have you ever seen one word set an entire movement in motion? One single comment that doesn't just spark outrage, but opens old wounds, brings buried histories back to the surface, and challenges the balance of global power? That's what happened when French President Emmanuel Macron used the word ungrateful to describe African leaders. He even went on to say that if Africa is surviving now, it's because of Paris. Now, let us be clear, this wasn't just a slip of the tongue. His words carried centuries of meaning. It wasn't just a criticism. It was a reminder of how Africa has been viewed by its former colonizers for generations. But here's the difference. This time, Africa didn't stay silent. Enter Ibrahim Traoré, the unapologetic and fearless leader of Burkina Faso. Traoré didn't just respond. He ignited a global conversation about respect, history, and what true independence looks like. So, what did Macron say? How did Traoré's fiery response change the narrative? And why is this moment so important for Africa's future? Here, we would like to take a moment and thank you for supporting us and being a valued part of our strong community. And if you are not yet a member, we encourage you to join us and help build an even stronger community together. Let's get started. Let's start with the moment that sets everything in motion. French President Emmanuel Macron stood before the world and accused African leaders of being ungrateful for the military support France has provided. On the surface, it might sound like a frustrated comment.
Jadema is fuming over the recent remarks made by the French President Emmanuel Macron at a foreign policy conference. Macron not just dismissed suggestions that his country had been forced out of the Sahel region, he went on further to say that he is still waiting for the Sahel nations to thank Paris for stopping them from falling into the hands of Islamist militants. The French president even called some African leaders ungrateful.
2. We had a secure relationship. In truth, it was of two kinds. One part was our commitment to fighting terrorism since 2013. We were right. I think some have forgotten to say thank you, but that's okay, it'll come in time. I'm in a good position to know that ingratitude is a disease that cannot be transmitted to humans. But I say this for all the African governments who have not had the courage, in the eyes of their public opinion, to bear it. None of.
And that's the French president Mr. Macron, plural. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Mr. Macron, plural.
None of them would be in a sovereign country today if the French army had not been deployed in this region.
But when you peel back the layers, it's so much more. Firstly, the word ungrateful was more than just an insult. It was loaded with centuries of condescension and
Are you looking to pass your driving test this year? Introducing Book Instructor, your ultimate
entitlement. Macron wasn't just implying that Africa owes France for its so-called assistance. He was suggesting that this debt is eternal and that Africa should remain thankful forever. But here's the real question: support for whom? When you take a closer look at France's involvement in Africa, it becomes painfully obvious that this support has rarely, if ever, been about genuinely helping African nations. Instead, it has consistently served France's interests. Whether it's about political influence, access to resources, or maintaining its status as a global power, France's actions have been less about partnership and more about control. Let's start with the military support Macron loves to talk about. French troops have been stationed in several African countries, supposedly to fight insurgency and stabilize the region. That sounds noble, right? But here's the thing. Look at the track record. Countries like Mali and Burkina Faso, which hosted French military bases for years, are still grappling with significant security challenges. Insurgent groups have grown stronger, not weaker. Civilians continue to live under constant threat, and local governments have struggled to maintain order. So, here's the uncomfortable truth. This military presence hasn't solved the problem. If anything, it's prolonged. Why? Because the presence of French troops often does more to protect France's interests than to address the root causes of instability. These troops secure strategic regions, ensuring that France maintains access to vital resources like uranium, gold, and oil. They position themselves as a buffer, not for African nations, but for France's energy and economic needs. Let's talk about Niger, for example. Niger is one of the world's largest producers of uranium, a resource that powers France's nuclear energy industry. French troops in Niger don't just fight insurgency, they protect the mines and trade routes that keep uranium flowing to France. And guess who benefits the most from this arrangement? Certainly not the people of Niger, who still face widespread poverty and poor infrastructure despite the wealth of their land. And this is the story of every African nation. And it doesn't stop there. France's military presence also serves a geopolitical purpose. By stationing troops in Africa, France maintains its image as a global power, a country capable of influencing events far beyond its borders. But this influence often comes at the expense of African nations, whose sovereignty is undermined by the constant presence of foreign forces. Now, ask yourself this. If France's military involvement truly benefited African nations, wouldn't we see significant improvements in security and stability by now? Instead, what we see are governments and citizens growing increasingly frustrated, accusing France of being more of a hindrance than a help. This is why Macron's word ungrateful stings so much. It's a word that erases the complexities of the relationship, reducing it to a one-sided narrative where France is the hero and Africa is the helpless recipient. But the reality is far different. France's so-called support has often been about creating dependency, not independence. It's about ensuring that African nations remain under France's influence, unable to fully chart their paths. So when Macron demands gratitude, it's not just tone-deaf, it's a reminder of a deeper imbalance. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Macron's comment wasn't just about frustration, it was about power.
To thank Paris for stopping them from falling into the hands of Islamist militants. The French president even called some African leaders ungrateful.
2. We had a secure relationship. In truth, it was of two kinds. One part was our commitment to fighting terrorism since 2013. We were right. I think some have forgotten to say thank you. But that's okay, it'll come in time. I'm in a good position to know that ingratitude is a disease that cannot be transmitted to humans. But I say this for all the African governments who have not had the courage, in the eyes of their public opinion, to bear it. None of them would be in a sovereign country today if the French army had not been deployed in this region.
Many say these comments by the French president were not just condescending.
France's influence in Africa is waning. Over the past few years, countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have rejected French troops, signaling a broader rejection of neocolonialism. Macron's words were an attempt to push back against this growing resistance, but instead of reasserting France's position, they exposed just how desperate that position has become. And then came Traoré, ready to challenge not just Macron's words, but the entire system they represent. How did Traoré respond? Traoré didn't waste time sugarcoating his response. When Macron described African leaders as ungrateful, Traoré called it exactly what it was: insulting and disrespectful. But he didn't stop there. He went further, delivering a statement that cut through the noise like a blade. We are not human beings in his eyes. Now let that sink in. Those 8 words carried the weight of centuries of history and struggle. Traoré wasn't just reacting to a careless remark. He was calling out a mindset that has lingered for far too long. It's a mindset that views Africa not as an equal partner, but as something to be managed, controlled, and judged. Macron's words may have been spoken in frustration, but they revealed a deeper truth. To many in the West, Africa is still seen through the lens of colonialism. Traoré's response wasn't just about Burkina Faso, it was about defending the dignity of the entire African continent. He wasn't speaking as a lone voice. He was channeling the frustrations of millions of Africans who have endured generations of exploitation, marginalization, and condescension. Macron's comment was a reminder of how often Africa has been treated as a problem to be solved, rather than a continent of vibrant nations.
For welding, you should purchase this convenient laser welding gun because you don't need to master welding skills
With their strengths and potential. And here's the thing. Traoré didn't try to soften his message to appease anyone. He wasn't concerned about being diplomatic or avoiding offense. Instead, he spoke with the raw honesty of someone who had simply had enough. His words were direct, unapologetic, and delivered with a clarity that left no room for misinterpretation. This wasn't just about rejecting an insult. It was about reclaiming respect. What made Traoré's response so powerful wasn't just what he said, but how deeply it resonated. Across Africa, people heard his words and thought, finally, someone is saying it out loud. This wasn't just a moment of defiance, it was a rallying cry. Traoré's statement reflected a collective sentiment that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades. The frustration of being told to be grateful for scraps while Africa's resources, labor, and ingenuity fuel the wealth of others. For so long, African nations have been expected to accept their place in a system designed to benefit everyone but themselves. Leaders have been pressured to conform, to play by rules written by those who profit from Africa's subservience. But Traoré's response broke through that narrative. He made it clear that Africa doesn't need to apologize for demanding respect or for standing up against those who seek to exploit it. And his message wasn't just heard, it was felt. Traoré became a voice for a new generation of Africans who were no longer willing to be patronized. His words carried a sense of pride and self-worth, reminding the world that Africa is not a charity case, nor a subordinate to Western powers. This wasn't just a moment for Burkina Faso, it was a moment for the entire continent. Traoré's response was a bold declaration that Africa's dignity is non-negotiable. It wasn't just about pushing back against Macron, it was about redefining the narrative. In that moment, Traoré reminded everyone, Africa and the world alike, that Africa is done playing the role of the grateful recipient. It's time for Africa to stand tall, unapologetic, and demand the respect it has always deserved. In the end, Traoré didn't just call out France, he had a suggestion for them too. And what he said wasn't just bold, it shook leaders across the globe. His words carried the weight of history, and they hit like a thunderclap. If anyone is ungrateful, it's France. They owe their existence to our ancestors. Now, let's take a moment to unpack that. Because this wasn't just a fiery clapback. It was a statement of fact. France's wealth and did appear. It wasn't built in isolation or through sheer effort alone. No, it was built on the backs of African people and the vast resources of the African continent. For centuries, Africa was the foundation of Europe's prosperity, and France was no exception. First, consider the labor of enslaved Africans. During the transatlantic slave trade, millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homes and sent to plantations, factories, and colonies, which fueled European economies. Their unpaid labor didn't just create wealth for European elites, it laid the groundwork for the industrial revolutions that transformed the West into a global power. France was a major player in this system, and its colonies in Africa and the Caribbean were among its most profitable ventures. But slavery was only the beginning. During the colonial era, France exploited Africa's vast natural resources: gold, diamonds, oil, timber, and more. These resources were extracted at an astonishing scale, enriching France while leaving African communities impoverished. Take Senegal, for example, whose peanut exports were used to fuel French industries, or Niger, where uranium mines have powered France's nuclear energy for decades. Even today, the wealth extracted from Africa during colonial rule remains a cornerstone of France's global standing. And then there's the human cost during the World Wars. France called upon its African colonies to supply soldiers for its military campaigns in both World War I and World War II. These African troops, often referred to as tirailleurs sénégalais, fought and died on foreign battlefields, not for their own countries, but to protect and expand the French Empire. They endured harsh conditions, discrimination, and the ultimate sacrifice, yet their contributions are rarely acknowledged. How many of us are taught about the thousands of African soldiers who died at Verdun on the Western Front or in the deserts of North Africa? How often do we hear their stories in history books or see their names honored in French memorials? Their sacrifices have been overshadowed, minimized, or outright ignored in the broader narrative of European history. So when Traoré said, "France owes its existence to our ancestors," he wasn't exaggerating. He was reminding the world of a truth that's often been erased or downplayed. His words weren't just about setting the record straight, they were a demand for recognition. He was saying, if you want to talk about gratitude, let's start with the debt France owes to Africa. What makes this statement even more powerful is the fact that it challenges the narrative France has long promoted about its relationship with Africa. For decades, France has positioned itself as a benefactor, framing its involvement in Africa as an act of generosity, whether through aid, military assistance, or cultural exchanges. But Traoré's words turned that narrative on its head. He exposed the imbalance, the one-sidedness, and the hypocrisy at the heart of that relationship. Traoré's statement wasn't just about words, it was about dignity. It was about reclaiming Africa's place in history, not as a continent that should feel grateful, but as one that deserves recognition, respect, and justice. It was a reminder that Africa isn't just a passive recipient of European help. It's a continent whose sacrifices and contributions have shaped the world in profound ways. But here's what sets Traoré apart. He doesn't stop at words. He's a leader who believes in action, and his leadership in Burkina Faso is a testament to that belief. Under his watch, the country isn't just demanding recognition, it's actively breaking away from the systems that have kept it dependent. From expelling French troops to rethinking economic policies, Traoré is turning his words into reality. This is why Traoré's statement of Macron's words. It was a declaration of a new era for Africa. An era where the continent no longer accepts being lectured or patronized. An era where leaders like Traoré are unafraid to speak truth to power and challenge the status quo. At that moment, Traoré wasn't just speaking for Burkina Faso, he was speaking for a continent that's tired of being told to be grateful for crumbs while its resources and labor have built empires. He was speaking for a new generation of Africans who are ready to reclaim their history, their dignity, and their future.
If you encounter an emergency situation outdoors, this multifunction flashlight can.
And perhaps that's why his words hit so hard. They weren't just a response, they were a reckoning. A reminder that the story of Africa and France isn't about charity or gratitude. It's about debt. And Traoré made it clear that it's time for that debt to be acknowledged. Now, you must be wondering, why does Macron seem so defensive? The answer is simple. France has a lot to lose. For decades, Africa has been central to France's global standing, acting as a cornerstone of its economy, energy security, and geopolitical influence. Without its ties to Africa, France's power and prestige would be severely diminished. France's reliance on Africa isn't just about raw materials, it's also about markets. African countries represent a huge consumer base for French goods and services. From cars and electronics to luxury brands like Chanel and Louis Vuitton, French products dominate many African markets. This isn't by accident, it's by design. Through trade agreements and economic policies established during the colonial era, France has ensured that its companies have an outsized presence in African economies. Losing influence in Africa would mean losing access to these lucrative markets, which would be a significant blow to France's economy. Losing its foothold in Africa doesn't just weaken France's position, it shifts the balance of power. As African nations assert their independence and develop stronger regional ties, the continent is becoming a rising force in global politics. Initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, and increasing collaboration within the African Union are signs that Africa is moving toward greater self-reliance and unity. This shift challenges the traditional power dynamics that have kept France and the West at the center of global decision-making. And this is exactly why Macron's comment wasn't just about Burkina Faso, it was about France's growing anxiety. Macron's frustration isn't simply a reaction to one country rejecting French influence. It's a response to a broader trend that threatens to upend a relationship that has long benefited France far more than it has benefited Africa. So, where does this leave us? Leaders like Traoré are showing the world that Africa isn't just rising, it's reclaiming its resources, its dignity, and its place on the global stage. This isn't just a political movement, it's a cultural shift. It's about Africa telling its own story, on its terms. And it's not just about rejecting old power dynamics, it's about building something better. A future where African nations are united, self-reliant, and focused on their growth. What's most exciting is the ripple effect this is creating. Traoré's actions are inspiring a new generation of leaders and citizens who are ready to challenge the status quo. They're proving that Africa doesn't need to rely on anyone else to thrive. And here's the best part. The world is starting to take notice. Because what's happening in Africa isn't just about Africa. It's a lesson for the rest of the world. That true independence comes from within. And respect between nations isn't optional. It's essential. It's simple. Africa is standing up for itself, and it's about time. Leaders like Traoré are proving that the days of being told to feel grateful are over. This is a new era, one where Africa isn't just surviving, it's thriving. Do you think now the Western leaders can say anything and get away with it? Why don't they respect other nations and expect respect in return? Let us know in the comments section. Will Macron apologize? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about, the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Right, we will continue to take a look at the downward turning of the French economy. These information, I understand, are not important for some people, but I have a duty to bring them to you. Alrighty. Righty, hold on. This is not long. It's not even 20 minutes, so dry your weeping eyes, all right?
France has been so much involved in Africa, especially in the Sahel region. Former French President Jacques Chirac once said, France would become a third world country without Africa. Now, it seems to be happening as France and French corporations are facing massive losses after they have been kicked out from Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Recently, it has been revealed that Air France has faced a collective loss of 65 million euros because it was kicked out of the Sahel region. The loss has been so painful that Air France wants to return to the Sahel region. However, Ibrahim Traoré from Burkina Faso and other military leaders in Mali and Niger will never let that happen. So what desperate actions France is making for an immediate return to Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, and what losses it is facing? In this video, let's know about that.
There is electromagnetic energy in that pyramid between 200 and...
For decades, France relied on Africa as its economic backbone, extracting wealth while maintaining geopolitical leverage over the continent. However, after revolutionary military leaders come to power in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, things have changed entirely. They brought a watershed moment for France, a major shock that has rattled France and French companies. The expulsion of French troops, corporations, and political influence from Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso has shattered France's economic stranglehold over the region. Nowhere is this decline more visible than in the financial devastation faced by Air France, which has lost over 65 million euros since being forced out of the Sahel. For Air France, the Sahel was more than just another destination. It was a highly profitable monopoly. The airline generated staggering daily revenues, 500 million CFA francs from Mali, 430 million from Niger, and 390 million from Burkina Faso, adding up to over 2 million euros per day. This level of profit was a reflection of just how deeply France depended on the Sahel for economic survival. And we are only talking about one of the hundreds of companies. But with the rise of military-led governments in these nations and their firm rejection of French dominance, Air France was pushed out, cutting off one of its most lucrative revenue streams. The result has been a financial catastrophe, leaving the airline scrambling to regain access to the region. However, the new governments have made it clear that the era of France's unchecked exploitation is over. The revolutionary leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger represent a new era of African governance, one that prioritizes sovereignty over submission. These leaders have taken bold steps to dismantle France's economic and military grip on their countries. That's because they know the reason France has leverage is because of the financial benefits it gets from Africa. If these are stopped, France will no longer have the financial backing that gives it international support. You should know that France has long maintained an image of economic strength and industrial power, but much of its success was built on resources it did not actually possess. Despite having little to no significant reserves of gold, uranium, and critical minerals, France remained a major exporter of these commodities for decades. These resources were not French, they were African. France extracted them from its former colonies, rebranded them as its own, and profited while African nations remained underdeveloped. One of the biggest examples of this exploitation was gold. France has no major gold mines, yet it exported vast quantities of the precious metal. The source has always been West African nations like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, where French companies controlled mining operations under unfair contracts. These deals ensured that African countries received only a small fraction of the wealth generated, while the gold was refined in France and sold as a French commodity. On this, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni openly exposed France on live TV. Now, with Sahel nations reclaiming their resources and kicking out French companies, France's so-called gold exports have all but disappeared, revealing how dependent it was on African wealth. The same pattern applies to uranium, coltan, cobalt, and lithium, essential minerals for modern technology, electric vehicles, and batteries. France does not have significant reserves of these minerals, yet it remains an important player in the high-tech industry. But that is changing. Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali's rejection of French influence is not just about political autonomy, but also about dismantling the structural economic dependence that kept Africa subservient to France. This movement gained momentum through a series of military coups that fundamentally altered the power dynamics in the Sahel. The overthrow of pro-French regimes was not merely about local politics, but an outright rejection of France's neo-colonial dominance. Paris reacted with fury, attempting to impose sanctions, severing diplomatic ties, and seeking to isolate the new governments. Yet these actions only accelerated France's downfall in the region. Instead of bowing to external pressure, the new leadership expelled French troops, shut down French embassies, and nationalized key industries that were once controlled by French corporations. Among the most symbolic and financially devastating blows was the removal of Air France, cutting off a major economic artery for France. For decades, Air France was more than just an airline. It was a strategic economic weapon, ensuring France's continued control over African air travel. The airline dictated flight routes, monopolized key connections, and extracted wealth from the region while reinvesting little into local economies. Air France maintained a near-total monopoly on flights between the Sahel and Europe, keeping fares artificially high while providing subpar services compared to other international carriers. This system funneled enormous sums of money out of Africa and into French corporate coffers, reinforcing France's economic grip on the region. However, when the revolutionary government seized power, they began to question why Air France was allowed to operate so freely while contributing so little to African nations. When the airline abruptly suspended flights in response to political changes, the Sahel nations responded by banning Air France from returning and exploring alternative partnerships. Mali's Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop openly criticized the airline's arrogance and exploitative business practices, exposing how it routinely canceled flights without accountability, stranding African passengers in Europe and elsewhere. He pointed out that such reckless behavior would never be tolerated in the US or other Western nations, yet Air France felt it could do as it pleased in Africa. That era, he stated, is over. If Air France wants to return, it will stand in line like any other company, without privilege, without special treatment. France is no longer in control. Africa is. But if Sahel nations have successfully expelled France and its corporate interests, why is Air France so desperate to return? The answer is economic survival. The loss of the Sahel has been an absolute disaster for France. French corporate dominance was built on the ability to control African markets, ensuring that everything from uranium to air travel remained under French control. With that system now crumbling, France is facing an economic crisis it cannot ignore. Yes, Air France's expulsion is part of a much larger collapse. One of the most severe blows to France has come from Niger, a country that has been the backbone of France's nuclear energy industry for over half a century. Orano, formerly Areva, France's largest nuclear energy company, depended heavily on Niger's uranium mines, fueling a power grid that provides over 70% of France's electricity. Before the coup in Niger, the country supplied nearly 35% of France's uranium at exploitative prices. Yet Niger itself received only about 5% of the profits from its uranium sales, while France pocketed the rest. When Niger's new military government came to power in July 2023, they immediately suspended uranium exports to France, saying that Orano plundered the country's wealth while leaving its people in poverty. The consequences for France were immediate and severe. French nuclear plants, heavily reliant on Niger's uranium, were forced to scramble for alternative suppliers from Canada and Kazakhstan at significantly higher costs.
I dare you to let me build you a completely free e-commerce store preloaded with 20 handpicked products that are trending all over the world.
Orano's mining operations in Niger came to a halt, leading to billions of euros in projected losses. More importantly, France lost its cheapest and most reliable uranium source, further increasing its domestic energy costs and threatening its energy security. Meanwhile, Niger has begun renegotiating uranium deals with Russia and China, ensuring that France will never regain its monopoly over Niger's uranium reserves. Beyond uranium, the Sahel region is rich in gold, lithium, coltan, and other valuable minerals, resources that French companies have historically extracted with minimal compensation to African governments. But with Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso now prioritizing resource nationalism, France's mining industry is collapsing. Gold mining, long dominated by French-backed firms, is now shifting into the hands of new partners. Mali, Africa's third-largest gold producer, has expelled French mining firms and is now working with Russian and Chinese companies. Burkina Faso, which produces over 50 tons of gold annually, has imposed strict regulations on French companies, making continued operations nearly impossible. Niger has also revoked several gold mining permits previously held by French firms, cutting off yet another lucrative revenue stream that once flowed directly to Paris. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. This collapse of French gold mining interests has hit major corporations hard. Endeavour Mining, which has deep French ties and significant operations in Mali and Burkina Faso, is now facing serious restrictions and the potential nationalization of its assets. Bolloré Group, which previously controlled the logistics and transport of French mining companies in the region, has lost key contracts and is being rapidly replaced by Chinese and Russian logistics firms. With these developments, France's ability to siphon off Africa's gold wealth while keeping local populations in poverty is coming to an end. Another major loss to France's declining economic control in Africa is Total Energies, the country's largest oil and gas company. For decades, Total Energies maintained dominance over major oil fields in Chad, Gabon, and parts of West Africa, securing cheap energy resources at the expense of African nations. But as Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso sever their economic ties with France, Total Energies is seeing its once profitable operations crumble to a halt. Niger has frozen oil exports to France and is now prioritizing trade agreements with China. Mali and Burkina Faso have also turned to Russia and Middle Eastern nations for energy partnerships, effectively sidelining Total Energies from the region. Without access to these African energy reserves, France is now increasingly dependent on expensive imports from the Middle East and the United States, a situation it has long wanted to avoid. Furthermore, France's economic woes in Africa extend far beyond natural resources. Infrastructure projects, once a French stronghold, are now being redirected to other international partners. Historically, French companies like Vinci, Bouygues, and Eiffage controlled the construction of highways, railways, airports, and hydropower dams across West Africa. These projects were typically awarded through corrupt contracts that ensured billions in African taxpayer money flowed into Paris while local economies remained underdeveloped. However, the new leadership in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger is dismantling this system. French firms are now being replaced by Chinese, Turkish, and Russian companies that offer more equitable partnerships. Local African businesses are also being prioritized over French firms, ensuring that infrastructure investments remain within Africa instead of being siphoned off to Paris. The collapse of Bolloré Group, which once controlled Africa's largest network of ports, railways, and shipping routes, is one of the most striking examples of this shift. With Sahel nations severing ties with French infrastructure firms, France is losing billions in logistics revenue. This change reflects a broader trend that the days when France dictated the economic policies of its former colonies are over. With its companies being expelled, supply chains cut off,
we are digital business owners. Are you looking for a way to make ends meet?
And financial dominance in the region shattered, France is now facing an economic crisis of historic proportions. For decades, the French economy was artificially sustained by Africa's natural wealth. Without access to cheap uranium from Niger, gold from Mali, oil from Chad, and minerals from Burkina Faso, France is now losing its competitive edge in global energy markets, facing rising costs in nuclear power production, struggling to maintain its trade dominance in West Africa, and watching once powerful French corporations crumble. What truly alarms France, however, is the growing realization that the Sahel's rejection of French influence may inspire the rest of Africa to follow suit. Already, Anti-French sentiment is growing in other former colonies, such as Senegal, Chad, and Cameroon, where governments are beginning to reconsider their economic dependence on France. Even Ivory Coast and Gabon, long seen as loyal French allies, are witnessing an increase in political movements calling for the end of French economic domination. Meanwhile, BRICS nations are gaining more influence across Africa, offering trade and development deals that present an alternative to France's historically exploitative arrangements. If this trend continues, France risks losing all remaining strongholds in Africa, permanently cutting off the wealth that has sustained it for over a century. The economic downfall of France in Africa is not just about business losses. It is the collapse of an entire system of neocolonial exploitation. The days when African wealth flowed into French banks, while Africans remained in poverty, are over. The Sahel nations have made it clear France is no longer welcome to exploit their resources. Paris is now experiencing what former French President Jacques Chirac once warned about. Without Africa, France is nothing. But with each passing day, Africa is proving that it does not need France to thrive. At the heart of this crisis is the end of France's economic model in Africa, a model based on extraction, control, and minimal reinvestment into African economies. Without Africa's resources, France is now struggling to maintain its position as a global economic power. However, interestingly, France wants Air France to return, and this push is not just about an airline, it is a strategic test. If France can force its way back in through Air France, it could open the door for other French corporations to follow. It could create the pretext for French diplomatic and even military re-engagement under the guise of economic cooperation. However, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso see through this maneuver. The leadership of these countries has made it clear that France will not be allowed to re-enter through the back door. The idea that Africa cannot function without France has been thoroughly debunked. In reality, it is France that cannot function without Africa. This revolution is not just about expelling one airline. It is about dismantling the entire economic system that France built to keep Africa under its thumb. The French government is now experiencing firsthand what happens when a country built on exploiting Africa suddenly loses its grip. The world is witnessing the rise of a new Africa that demands fair partnerships, respect, and economic justice. France, once the master of the Sahel, is now learning that without Africa's resources, it is no longer a superpower. What do you think? Will France accept its defeat and its economic decline? Or will it find a new reason to go to Africa to keep getting African resources and continue exploiting the continent? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on what solid should be done by Ibrahim Traoré and other military leaders to ensure France can never come back to Africa. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until
Thanks for watching. Me know something we're really interested in, but we have to learn no matter how small the crowd is. So we told you that we're going to introduce to you this initiative, and we invite your feedback as to what we are going to introduce to you, the People's Tribunal and the Global TV Center for Justice. Let me pull up things by my phone and I can pull up it closer to me. Hold on there. I'm going to read two documents. You'll have a bit of duplication, like Andrew Holness housing Galangin. But never mind, you will get it. Right. No, let me do this one first. Right, hold on. Bear with. Let me fix my phone so I can see it good enough to read it. Right. The Global TV Center for Justice is a groundbreaking concept to design leverage to the power of media to promote justice and accountability on an international scale. We must stop isolating ourselves, Jamaica, because we live in a global world. And the things that happen in a global world affects us. This innovative platform aims to bring attention to global injustice, amplify marginalized voices, and engage the global audience to engage in meaningful dialogue about human rights and the rule of law. The objective of the Center for Justice are awareness and education, which is one of the major part, which will be the starting point, and we hope we can get feedback on. The primary objective of the Global TV Center for Justice is to raise awareness about human rights issues worldwide through informative documentaries, interviews, and live broadcasts. The center aims to educate viewers on complex legal matters and the impact of social injustice. Under the awareness and education, one of the first campaign that I would like us as a group to channel is bring back civic in our school. So that is one of the major things I would want us to champion under the awareness and education, is to bring back civic education in our schools. Number 2, amplifying marginalized voices. By providing a platform for individuals and community often overlooked by mainstream media, we know that happen a lot. The center seeks to amplify voices. This includes stories of indigenous communities, refugees, and victims of human rights abuse. Number 3, promoting legal accountability. The center collaborates with legal expert and human rights organizations to highlight injustice by showcasing these cases. The center engages legal accountability and support efforts to bring perpetrators to justice. You know, like how we're called for justice for the young man where Bell Nevis shot, even though now then turn around arrest Chad for this chopping, but we don't hear nothing about Bell Nevis for the chopping. As well as we want to hear there's many issues of justice outstanding where Mocha need to speak to us about, where the police killing, where a lot of police we need to be brought to justice. So there's a lot that can be covered under promoting legal accountability. Fostering a global dialogue. Through panel discussion and interactive program, the Global TV Center for Justice fosters dialogue amongst viewers from different culture and social background. This exchange of perspective aims to build a more informative and empathetic global community. What we hope to do under the banner of number 4 is, me think Chad get paid off. Do you think so? Because Chad and his sister look like them appear along with this thing in a beat and teach. We hope to make connections with people around the world, connect with other vloggers and influencers around the world who are like-minded for justice and accountability globally. So that's what we aim to do under number 4. It's a broad scope. This is not a ownership of global TV thing. This is an initiative for all of us to work collectively. Now, the People's Tribunal. Complementing the Global Television Center for Justice will be the People's Tribunal. This is an initiative designed to engage citizens in the pursuit of justice. The tribunal functions as a symbolic, function as a symbolic court. Note the word symbolic court, where cases of social and environmental justice are presented, debated, and judged by a diverse panel of expert and ordinary citizens. So under that heading of the People's Tribunal, what we would hope to do is have a social media panel where we have experts, if we can, and depending on everybody to help in this, in inviting the people who you know who are experts, who are willing to participate, where we look at the various different issues of corruption and injustice, where we have experts bringing information, evidential information to us. So that's what we hope to do with the People's Tribunal, where we have experts and citizens come together. Especially one of the places where this would serve well is the whole housing debacle at the moment, where that involves the 2 social housing project, the indigent and the new social housing, as well as the NHT scam and debacle. So those are things that people could present their argument. We have experts, especially, upon the 650 million galangin. So there's a lot we can cover under that. So the features of the People's Tribunal is public participation. The tribunals seek to invite the public to participate by submitting their cases, the issues that you're having, the injustice that you face and you're not getting forward with in the system, presenting your evidence, whatever evidence you have to support your claim of injustice, and we engage in a holistic discussion. This participatory approach is to empower individuals to take active role in advocating for justice. Point 2, expert panel. This feature, if we put this together, each session will feature legal experts, human rights activists, community leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, those who can provide insight into method of solution that we can use to advance ourselves. Recommendation of action. While nothing that we are doing have any legal effect, but what we can also do as well, we can make recommendation to places like the Integrity Commission and others. We can make reference to FID and MOCA and them place the them place them people that always a call out for whatever information of corruption you present to them. We can make representation as a group in ways like that. Broadcast and documentation, point 4. Or is it point 5? Point 5, no, point 4 rather. What this whole initiative will all be in the social spheres, where all of the panels and happenings on the debate and presenting of argument, all of those will be conducted in the social spheres. As a part of this as well, we will use the tool of access to information to gather more supported information to support the tribunal work. So what we hope to do with this initiative, the Global TV Center for Justice and the People's Tribunal, is to create an advocacy platform for change, to encourage people to take a stand for justice, because it's never going to be done by anybody else. It's always people that lift themselves out of a situation. We're never going to be helped by anyone if we don't unite and start to work collectively, dealing with our issues collectively, putting our political bias and tribalism aside. So we hope that you can provide us feedback. You know our WhatsApp numbers. They're always running at the bottom of the screen now and then. So I'd like you to provide me your feedback by WhatsApp, because I know all the time I go read the comments. So if you can provide me your feedback by by WhatsApp, I'd be grateful. And we would like to hear from you if you want to be a part of the Center for Justice and the People's Tribunal in our pursuit for justice and to change our social, political, and economic standing. Under our education and awareness, also, a major part of that is about political education. Political education to increase public participation, meaningful public participation that would make government listen to us. It's because we're splintered and divided and very tribal. That's why they keep taking liberties of us. But if we work together, we can certainly make a change. Look at the major effect of the actions of 3 presidents, 3 leaders in Africa. Look at the massive changes, the massive difference it makes. So, tell me also if you like the logo or kind of do some changing around with the color, because the ring in the middle is like a color, a representation of the colors of justice. So under this banner, we're fighting for everything justice. So in the middle, you have environmental justice in the green. In the purple, hold on, sorry. Not this one. Oh, I didn't put on that one. It's in the small. Sorry about that. In the purple, it's disability rights, and that covers a lot of others. In the red, there's children and young people. The blue is health. The orange is refugees and asylum seekers. The yellow is gender equality. And the dark green is racial injustice. So it's a holistic stand for justice and the rule of law. And in an era where our political class are becoming more and more corrupt, I do believe that political education is very necessary for our people to advance their understanding of the world we live in. I want to thank you all very much for being here tonight as a part of our Friday night initiative, where we look at geopolitical stories in a fast-moving, shifting power of this our world. Thank you all very much. I think I'm going to rest this weekend. Remember, I promised to rest last weekend, and I did not. I'm going to hold my fingers that may not touch the computer or anything, and have some rest this weekend. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the Friday. Enjoy your weekend. And the Easy Jerk, contact me on WhatsApp for help for your YouTube channel and thumbnail and stuff in it. I can put you on in me if you know how to use Canva. I can give you access to my Canva team so you can work in there and watch a lot of Canva tutorial where I show you how to do a lot of those. But link me on WhatsApp anyway. Anyway, my people, thank you all very much and have an amazing weekend. Thanks and good night from the Global Television Group. I'm going to use this later on. Oh, yes, that's fine. Oh, yes. All right, my peeps. Thank you all very much. Have a blessed one.
If you don't like missing out on the latest shows but still enjoy classic hits, then Global TV Group 358 is your perfect match. Global TV Group 358 isn't just another channel, it's your ultimate TV experience. From breaking news to binge-worthy dramas and timeless classics, we've got it all. Our unique blend of original content and global favorites means there's something for everyone. And guess what? With GTVG's seamless streaming, you can watch anywhere, anytime. Plus, our interactive features let you be part of the action. So, whether you're a seasoned binge watcher or a casual viewer, Global TV Group 358 is here to keep you entertained day and night. Don't just watch TV, experience it with Global TV Group 358. Subscribe now and never miss a moment.